Captain Neri Kim stood at the observation deck of the Kepler 442 bits mining station watching the twin suns cast long shadows across the rocky landscape. The morning shift was beginning, and she could see the workers moving like tiny dots between the extraction platforms. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. Neri had learned to trust her instincts during 15 years of military service. Right now, those instincts were screaming that danger was coming. She just could not figure out what kind of danger or from where. "Captain, the weekly supply report is ready for your review," said Lieutenant Taiho Shin as he approached with a data tablet. Taiho had been assigned to the mining colony 6 months ago and still treated every small task like a major military operation. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Neri replied, taking the tablet. "Any unusual readings from the outer system scanners today?" "Actually, yes, ma'am. We have been picking up some strange energy signatures near the asteroid belt. The tech crew thinks it might be solar flare interference or maybe equipment malfunction." Neri frowned as she scrolled through the scanner data. The readings showed brief spikes of organized energy that did not match any natural phenomenon she knew. More importantly, these spikes had been happening for 3 days now, but no one had mentioned them until she asked directly. "Has anyone tried to contact the Proxima station about these readings?" she asked. "We sent a routine communication burst yesterday, but have not received a response yet. Sometimes the relay stations have delays, you know how it is." That was the problem. Neri did know how interstellar communications worked, and delays were rare unless something was seriously wrong. She made a mental note to check on all neighboring systems personally. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Ha-Won Park was organizing supplies for the monthly health screenings. The colony had 237 people, and keeping everyone healthy in the harsh environment required constant attention. As she counted medical equipment, she noticed something odd. "Bora, could you help me check these inventory numbers?" Ha-Won called to the chief engineer who was working on air filtration systems nearby. Bora Lee wiped her hands on a cloth and walked over to examine the medical supplies. "What seems to be the problem?" "According to the computer, we should have received a shipment of emergency medical kits last week, but I cannot find them anywhere. The shipping manifest shows they were delivered, but they are not in storage." Bora checked her own records on a handheld device. "That is strange. The cargo manifest from the last transport shows medical supplies were unloaded. Let me ask Jinwoo if he saw where they were stored." They found Jinwoo Choi in the main engineering bay, where he was repairing mining equipment. The young mechanic had a reputation for noticing everything that happened around the colony. "Medical kits," Jinwoo said, scratching his head. "I remember unloading some sealed containers, but I thought they went to the security office. Maybe Lieutenant Shin requisitioned them for something." Ha-Won felt a small chill run down her spine. Why would security need extra medical supplies unless they were expecting trouble? She decided to ask Captain Kim about it directly. Back on the observation deck, Neri was studying communication logs from the past week. What she found made her stomach tighten with worry. Not only had Proxima Station failed to respond to their latest message, but communications from all 6 neighboring systems had stopped completely over the past 5 days. In space, silence was never a good sign. Systems went quiet for only a few reasons, and most of them were very bad. Equipment failure affected single stations, not entire sectors. Solar storms were tracked weeks in advance, and warnings were sent to all affected areas. That left only one possibility Neri did not want to consider. When Ha-Won arrived at the observation deck, she found Neri staring out at the star field with an expression of deep concentration. "Captain, I wanted to ask about some missing medical supplies." "Medical supplies?" Neri turned to face the doctor. "What kind of supplies?" "Emergency trauma kits. The computer says they were delivered, but we cannot locate them. Jinwoo thinks they might have gone to security." Neri was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to her personal terminal and began typing rapidly. After several minutes, she looked up with a grim expression. "Doctor, I need you to do something for me. Check our emergency supply levels. All categories: food, water, medical equipment, and power cells. Do it quietly and report only to me. Captain, is everything all right? I hope so, Neri replied, looking back out at the peaceful-looking landscape. But I have a feeling our quiet little mining colony is about to become very interesting. As the day shift continued their normal routines, none of them knew that their peaceful world was about to change forever. In the darkness of space, something was moving toward them, and silence was about to become their greatest weapon. The emergency alarm shattered the morning quiet at exactly 8:47 hours. Neri was already running toward the command center before most people realized what was happening. Her military training had taught her to move first and think while moving. Lieutenant Tahoe was standing at the main scanner console with his face pale and his hands shaking slightly. Captain, you need to see this immediately. Neri looked at the scanner display and felt her blood turn cold. 15 massive ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system. The vessels were unlike anything in human databases, and each one was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human warship. How long until they reach us? Neri asked, keeping her voice steady. At current speed, approximately 4 hours, ma'am. Send an immediate distress signal to Earth Command. Use emergency protocols. Already tried, Captain. Something is jamming all our long-range communications. We cannot reach anyone outside this system. Neri stared at the alien fleet on the scanner. The ships were moving in perfect formation toward their small mining colony. Whatever these beings were, they had come prepared for war. Attention, human settlement. A voice suddenly boomed through every speaker in the colony. The voice was deep and mechanical, with strange clicking sounds between words. This is War Commander Kralthik of the Vorthik Empire. Your system now belongs to us. Every person in the colony stopped what they were doing and listened in stunned silence. Bora dropped the wrench she was holding. Jin Wu looked up from his repair work with wide eyes. Hai Wan gripped the medical scanner in her hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation, the alien voice continued. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlement. You have 1 standard hour to respond with unconditional surrender. The transmission ended, leaving only the hum of machinery and the sound of people breathing heavily. Neri could hear conversations starting throughout the colony as people began to panic. Captain, what are your orders? Tahoe asked. Send no response. Complete communication blackout starting now. Ma'am, should we not try to negotiate, or at least buy more time? No, Lieutenant. We respond with silence. Tahoe looked confused but began shutting down all external communication systems. Neri activated the colony-wide intercom and chose her words carefully. Attention all residents. This is Captain Kim. We are now under emergency protocols. All civilians report to designated shelter areas immediately. Colony personnel maintain normal work schedules, but avoid unnecessary outdoor activities. Remain calm and follow the instructions of your section leaders. Jin Wu found Bora in the main engineering section, where she was checking power systems with nervous energy. Bora, what do you think we should do? Those ships look like they could destroy us without even slowing down. The captain knows what she is doing, Bora replied, but her voice was not as confident as her words. Neri has fought in real wars. We are just mining engineers. Maybe we should contact them. Tell them we are peaceful civilians who do not want any trouble. Jin Wu listened to me carefully. Sometimes in engineering, when you have a dangerous pressure buildup, the worst thing you can do is open the valve too quickly. You have to be very careful about how you release that pressure or everything explodes. Meanwhile, Hawan was moving through the residential areas, helping elderly colonists and families with children get to the underground shelter areas. Most people were scared but following instructions. A few were asking questions she could not answer. Dr. Park, why are we not trying to talk to these aliens? Asked So Yum Han, who managed the colony supply systems. Maybe they just want to trade or establish peaceful contact. I do not know, So Young, but Captain Kim has military experience dealing with hostile situations. We should trust her judgment. In the command center, Neri was studying everything they knew about the approaching fleet. The alien ships were using scanning beams that swept across the colony every few minutes. They were clearly mapping the settlement and counting the human population. What worried Neri most was how organized and professional this invasion appeared. These were not explorers or desperate refugees. They were experienced conquerors who had done this many times before. "Captain, the alien commander is broadcasting again," Taiho reported. "Your silence tells us you choose to resist," Commander Krell-Thek announced. "This is unfortunate, but not unexpected. Primitive species often make poor decisions when faced with superior force. We will begin orbital bombardment in 30 minutes unless you surrender." The transmission ended and Taiho looked at Neri with desperation in his eyes. "Captain, they are going to destroy us. We have to respond." "No, Lieutenant. We maintain silence. That is an order." "But ma'am, in war the first rule is never let your enemy know what you are thinking. Right now they expect us to be terrified and begging for mercy. Instead we give them nothing. No fear, no anger, no information. Just silence." Neri looked out at the colony where people were following her orders and preparing for whatever came next. She hoped her instincts were right, because silence was about to become their only weapon against an enemy that could destroy them with ease. The Vorthek landing ships descended through the atmosphere like falling metal mountains. Commander Krell-Thek watched from his command vessel as his troops prepared to take control of the human settlement. He expected to find either cowering civilians begging for mercy or foolish resistance fighters making their last stand. Instead, his soldiers found empty buildings. "Report," Krell-Thek growled into his communication device as the first transport touched down in the colony center. "Sir, the settlement appears to be abandoned. No human contacts detected in the main residential area." "Impossible. Our scanners showed over 200 life forms just hours ago." "Yes, sir, but they are not here now. Buildings are intact but empty. No signs of struggle or hasty evacuation." Krell-Thek felt a strange uneasiness in his chest. In 30 years of conquest, he had never encountered a target that simply vanished. Humans were supposed to be a young species with limited technology. How had they disappeared so completely in such a short time? Deep beneath the colony in the old mining tunnels, So Young Han was coordinating the most complex logistics operation of her career. Moving 237 people plus essential supplies into underground chambers without leaving any trace above ground required careful planning. "The last group from Sector 7 is coming down now," whispered Maijin Oh, who was monitoring alien communications from a hidden relay station. "Their scanners cannot penetrate this deep into the rock." "Good," So Young replied quietly. "How are we doing on air circulation?" "Bora has the ventilation systems running at minimum power. The aliens should not detect the heat signatures, but we need to be very careful about noise." Above ground, the Vorthak soldiers were growing confused and frustrated. They had been trained to fight enemies who fought back, or populations who surrendered. An empty settlement with no explanation made no sense to their military doctrine. "Search every building," ordered Captain Vexnock, the ground force commander. "Check for hidden chambers, underground bunkers, anywhere these humans might be hiding." The alien soldiers began their search, but they were looking for obvious hiding places. None of them thought to check the mining equipment that looked abandoned, but was actually carefully positioned to block scanner readings from the tunnel entrances below. In the underground medical station, Ha-1 was treating a colonist who had twisted her ankle during the evacuation. She worked by the light of a small medical scanner, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. "How long do you think we can stay down here?" asked the injured woman. "As long as necessary," Ha-1 replied, but privately she wondered the same thing. The tunnels had enough air and water for several days, but what happened after that? Jin Woo and Bora were moving through maintenance shafts that connected different parts of the colony. Their job was to make small adjustments to systems that would create problems for the occupying aliens without being obvious sabotage. "If we reduce the oxygen mixture in the administrative building by just 2%, the aliens will feel tired and confused, but they will not know why," Bora explained, as she adjusted atmospheric controls. "What about the power grid?" Jinwoo asked. "We program random fluctuations, lights that flicker, heating that cycles on and off, water pressure that drops unexpectedly. Nothing that looks deliberate, but enough to make them uncomfortable." The aliens had enhanced hearing compared to humans, but their eyesight was poor in dim light. Dr. Hyun-Soo Jang had discovered this by analyzing the medical scans Neri had ordered him to take secretly when the first alien transmissions arrived. The electromagnetic patterns in the alien voices revealed biological information about their sensory systems. Captain Hyun-Soo reported to Neri through their secure underground communication network. "The aliens rely heavily on sound for navigation and threat detection, but they have trouble seeing clearly when lighting is below 60% of Earth normal." "That is very useful information, Doctor. Can you determine anything else about their biology?" "Their vocal patterns suggest the use of sonic communication among themselves. They may be able to hear things happening in the colony that we cannot detect." Neri filed this information away. Every detail about the enemy could become important later. On the surface, the Vortex soldiers were beginning to report strange experiences. Equipment that worked perfectly during testing would malfunction at critical moments. Doors that should open automatically would stick, requiring manual force. Climate control systems would cycle between too hot and too cold, making rest periods uncomfortable. "Sir, something is wrong with this place," reported Sergeant Morthkix. "The buildings look abandoned, but everything feels like it is watching us." "Nonsense," replied Captain Vexnock, but privately he was beginning to agree. The empty human settlement had an atmosphere of tension that made his scales itch with nervousness. Commander Kralthek studied reports from his ground forces with growing irritation. His soldiers were elite warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. They should not be complaining about minor equipment problems and strange feelings. "Perhaps the humans fled to another part of the planet," suggested his tactical officer. "Our orbital scans show no large populations anywhere else on this world. They are here somewhere. Then why can we not find them?" Kralthek had no answer for that question, but he was beginning to suspect that the humans had not fled in panic as he expected. Somehow they had vanished on purpose, and that meant they were planning something. In the deepest part of the mining tunnels, Neri was holding a meeting with her section leaders. The first phase of their plan was working, but the real test was still ahead. "The aliens are confused and frustrated," she said quietly. "Now we begin phase 2. It is time to make them afraid." Private Kethmore was on guard duty outside the colony communications center when he saw the shadow move across the window. He raised his weapon and activated his helmet scanner, but found nothing. The building was supposed to be empty like all the others. "Control, this is Perimeter Guard 7. I have a possible contact at Grid Reference 44 Alpha." Confirmed. Guard 7. Investigating. But when the investigation team arrived, they found only empty rooms and the faint smell of human presence that seemed to linger everywhere in the abandoned colony. Kethmore was certain he had seen something, but his fellow soldiers were beginning to look at him with suspicion. This was exactly what Security Chief Unbai Lim had planned. From her hidden position in the maintenance tunnels beneath the communications building, Unbai watched the alien search team through a fiber optic camera no bigger than a pencil lead. She had spent 12 years in military intelligence before retiring to colony life, and she knew how to make enemies see things that were not there. "Phase 2 is active," she whispered into her micro-communicator. "All teams begin ghost protocols." Throughout the colony, human operatives began the next stage of psychological warfare. Young Ho Kim had reprogrammed the environmental systems to create brief air currents that would move curtains or papers when aliens walked by. The movements were subtle but enough to catch the edge of peripheral vision. Su Jin Yang had modified the electrical systems to create small electromagnetic pulses that would interfere with alien helmet displays. The interference lasted only seconds but happened at random intervals, creating a constant sense of equipment unreliability. "The key is to make them doubt their own senses," Yunbai had explained during their planning session. Warriors depend on confidence. Take that away, and they become nervous children. In the abandoned residential quarters, Sergeant Nexthol was searching apartments for signs of human presence when his communication device started picking up strange signals. The sounds were almost like whispered conversations in the human language, but too faint to understand clearly. "Did anyone else hear that transmission?" he asked his squad. "Hear what, Sergeant?" "The human voices on the comm channel." His soldiers checked their own devices, but heard only normal static. Nexthol was hearing the carefully crafted audio that Mai-Jin-O was broadcasting on frequencies that only certain alien communication equipment could detect. The messages were fragments of conversation, recorded earlier and played at barely audible levels. The psychological pressure was working exactly as Neri had hoped. Alien soldiers were reporting contact with humans that other soldiers could not confirm. Equipment was failing at crucial moments, but working perfectly when technicians tested it. Strange sounds and movements were noticed by individual aliens, but never by groups. Commander Krelthek was receiving increasingly bizarre reports from his ground forces. His elite warriors were claiming to see ghosts and hear voices that no one else could detect. Some were requesting medical evaluation for possible mental instability. "Sir, I must report unusual activity in Sector 12, said Captain Vexnock during the daily briefing. Multiple contacts reported, but no actual humans located. Define unusual activity, Captain. Movement detected by individual soldiers. Equipment malfunctions during operations, but not during maintenance checks. Unexplained sounds and electromagnetic anomalies. Are you telling me that your experienced warriors are being frightened by empty buildings?" Vexnock was quiet for a moment before responding. "Sir, something is wrong with this place. The humans may have left behind some kind of psychological warfare technology." Kralthek considered this possibility. Human technology was supposed to be primitive, but perhaps they had developed advanced methods of mental manipulation. It would explain the strange behavior of his troops. Meanwhile, in the underground command center, Neri was reviewing reports from her teams. The alien occupying force was showing clear signs of stress and reduced effectiveness. Patrols were moving more slowly and staying closer together. Guards were jumping at minor sounds and checking empty rooms multiple times. "The aliens are starting to expect threats everywhere," reported Gunfire. "Their reaction time is slowing down because they are spending too much energy looking for dangers that might not exist." "Perfect," Neri replied. "Now we escalate to Phase 3. Chihai Ryu had been a transport pilot before the invasion, and she understood alien technology better than most humans. Using equipment salvaged from a damaged alien drone, she had learned to mimic their scanner signatures. "I can make their own sensors show false readings," she explained to Neri. "Ghost contacts that appear on their displays, but vanish when they investigate. Phantom energy signatures that suggest large groups of humans moving through areas we know are empty. How many false contacts can you generate? Enough to make them think we have a full military battalion hidden somewhere in the colony." The plan was working beyond their expectations. The Vorthic Empire had built their military doctrine around overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They had no training for dealing with an enemy that refused to fight but constantly threatened to appear. By the end of the third day of occupation, alien soldiers were exhausted from chasing contacts that disappeared before they could be engaged. Equipment failures had reduced their operational efficiency by nearly 40%. Most importantly, their confidence was shattered. Private Kethmore had been moved to interior guard duty after reporting too many false contacts during perimeter patrol. Now he stood watch in the colony administration building, jumping at every small sound and shadow. His weapon was always ready, but he no longer trusted what his eyes and ears were telling him. In the darkness between the walls, Unbai smiled as she watched the nervous alien through her hidden camera. The greatest warriors in the galaxy were being defeated by uncertainty and their own imagination. "Ghost Protocol is successful," she reported to Neri. "The enemy is ready for Phase 3. Neri nodded with satisfaction. Soon it would be time to show the aliens that humans could be much more dangerous when they chose to remain invisible. Commander Krelthek stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring down at the human colony with growing frustration. His ground forces had been occupying the settlement for 5 days, but still had no prisoners, no resources, and no clear victory to report to the Empire. "Sir, the troops are requesting permission to destroy several buildings to force the humans out of hiding," reported his tactical officer. "Granted. Begin with the power generation facility." "Sir, that will eliminate the electrical grid for the entire settlement." "Good. Perhaps losing their comfortable hiding places will motivate the humans to surrender." But Krelthek did not understand that destroying infrastructure would only help the humans. In the underground tunnels, Daeyun Choi was explaining this to a group of worried colonists. "When they destroy our surface systems, it actually works in our favor," she said quietly. "Now they cannot use our own power grid communications or environmental controls against us. We are already living independently down here." Daeyun had been a survival instructor before joining the colony, and she knew that sometimes losing possessions made you stronger. The aliens were thinking like conquerors who wanted to claim valuable resources. They could not imagine an enemy that became more dangerous by losing everything. Above ground, the destruction began. Vorthak heavy weapons turned the main power station into smoking ruins. The communications array was vaporized. Water treatment facilities were reduced to scrap metal. Each blast was intended to terrorize hidden humans into surrendering. Instead, the explosions had a different effect. Jihai Ryu was monitoring alien communications when she heard something unexpected in the radio chatter between Vorthak soldiers. "Listen to this," she told Ne, replaying back a recorded transmission. "The aliens are arguing among themselves about the destruction." The recording revealed frustration and confusion in alien voices. Some soldiers were questioning why they were destroying the very resources they had come to capture. Others were complaining that the mission was taking too long and achieving nothing useful. "This gives us an opportunity," Neri realized. Their own tactics are working against them. She activated the colony-wide communication system that connected all the underground positions. "All teams prepare for Operation Mirror. We are going to use their strength against them." Operation Mirror was Neri's most ambitious plan yet. Instead of hiding from alien technology, the humans would capture it and turn it into a weapon. Young Ho Kim and Su Jin Yang had been working for days to understand the alien drones that patrol the colony. "We cannot fight their drones directly," Young Ho explained to his technical team. "But we can reprogram them to work for us instead of against us." The plan required perfect timing. When the next alien patrol drone flew over the colony center, Sujin activated an electromagnetic pulse device that temporarily disabled its control systems. In the few seconds before backup systems activated, Young Ho uploaded new programming through a hidden transmitter. To the alien operators, the drone appeared to function normally. But now it was also broadcasting subsonic frequencies that would cause discomfort and mild disorientation in Vorthak physiology. Dr. Hyun-Soo had discovered that certain sound frequencies interfered with alien nervous systems. "The beauty of this approach is that they will never suspect their own equipment," Jihai said as she monitored the results. "They will think the symptoms are caused by stress or disease." Within hours, alien soldiers throughout the colony began reporting headaches, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating. The symptoms were mild but constant, creating a steady drain on their effectiveness and morale. Commander Kralthek received medical reports that baffled his ship doctors. Nearly 70% of his ground forces were experiencing unexplained health problems. Some requested to return to the ships for treatment. Others asked to be transferred to different assignments. "How can elite warriors be defeated by empty buildings and broken equipment?" he demanded during an emergency meeting with his officers. "Sir, perhaps the humans have developed biological weapons," suggested the chief medical officer. "Our scans detected no dangerous organisms in the colony. Then maybe it is psychological warfare using methods we do not understand." Kralthek was beginning to suspect the same thing. But how could a primitive species create psychological weapons sophisticated enough to affect Vorthak minds? It should have been impossible. In the underground command center, Neri was reviewing the success of Operation Mirror. The aliens were now fighting against their own technology without realizing it. Their superior weapons had become a liability that weakened them instead of strengthening their position. "Captain, we are receiving requests from some colonists to launch direct attacks while the aliens are weakened," reported Tao. "No, Lieutenant. Direct attacks would give them something familiar to fight against. Our advantage comes from being incomprehensible to their military thinking. But surely we could capture some of their equipment or take prisoners for intelligence." "Think about what you are suggesting, Tao. If we capture alien prisoners, we become responsible for feeding and guarding them. If we steal their equipment, we have to learn how to use and maintain it. Both actions would make us more like them." Neri looked around at her officers and section leaders. "Our strength is not in becoming better warriors. Our strength is in remaining invisible, patient, and completely unpredictable. We win by being something they cannot understand or fight against." Above ground, the Vorthok occupation force was falling apart. Equipment failures had reached critical levels. Medical problems were spreading among the troops. Strange phenomena continued to plague their operations. Most importantly, the warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds were beginning to doubt their own abilities. "Sir, I must recommend immediate withdrawal to the ships," Captain Vexnock reported to Commander Kralfek. "The ground mission is no longer sustainable." "Unacceptable, Captain. The Empire does not retreat from primitive species." "Then what do you suggest, sir? We cannot fight an enemy we cannot find, and our own equipment is working against us." Kralfek had no answer. For the first time in his military career, he was facing defeat without ever engaging in battle. Private Kethmore sat in the abandoned colony cafeteria, staring at his weapon with empty eyes. 3 of his squad mates had requested medical evacuation in the past 2 days, claiming they could no longer handle the constant stress of patrolling empty buildings that felt like they were watching back. "I trained for 15 years to become a warrior," he said to Corporal Zephlin, who was sitting across from him. "I have fought in 7 successful conquests. But this place makes me feel like a frightened child." "The humans are weak," Zephlin replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "They hide underground like insects because they cannot face us in honest combat." "Then why are we the ones who feel defeated?" Neither soldier had an answer for that question. Around them, the cafeteria was perfectly clean and organized, as if the humans had simply vanished moments before. Food was still stored in working refrigeration units. Chairs were neatly arranged under tables. Everything suggested normal life interrupted rather than desperate flight. But something about the normalcy felt wrong. It was too perfect, too undisturbed, as if the entire scene had been carefully arranged to create maximum psychological impact. In the underground strategic center, Sumin Park was analyzing intelligence reports with the focused intensity of a chess master planning 10 moves ahead. Before joining the colony, she had been a military strategist specializing in unconventional warfare theory. "The alien ground forces are showing severe morale degradation," she reported to Neri. "Individual soldiers are requesting transfers off-world. Some are claiming this assignment violates their warrior honor code." "Explain that last part," Neri said. "Vorthok military culture is built around glorious battle against worthy opponents. Fighting invisible enemies who refuse to engage goes against everything they believe about honorable warfare. They feel humiliated rather than victorious." Su Min had been studying alien psychology through their intercepted communications, and she understood something important about their mindset. The Vorthok measured success through dramatic conquest and clear victory. A mission that dragged on without decisive results was worse than outright defeat. "This gives us leverage for the final phase," she continued. "But we need to escalate the psychological pressure at exactly the right moment." In-Ho Lee had been preparing false evidence of human military reinforcements using salvaged alien scanning equipment and creative engineering. His background in holographic systems made him perfect for creating convincing illusions on alien sensors. "I can generate scanner signatures that suggest incoming human battleships," he explained to the tactical planning group. The aliens will detect what appears to be a full military fleet approaching this system. How realistic will these false readings appear? Asked Neri. Realistic enough to fool orbital sensors. I studied their scanning protocols for weeks. I know exactly what patterns to create to trigger their military alert systems. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. If the aliens discovered the deception, they might respond with overwhelming violence. But Su Min believed the psychological timing was perfect for maximum impact. Their ground commander is already under pressure from his superiors, she explained. Reports of human reinforcements will force him to make a critical decision under stress. Military leaders make their worst choices when they feel trapped between impossible options. Above-ground Commander Kralthek was indeed feeling trapped. His daily reports to the Empire were becoming increasingly difficult to write. How could he explain that his elite forces were being neutralized by an enemy they had never actually seen or fought? Sir, we are detecting unusual energy patterns approaching from the outer system, reported his sensor officer. Kralthek felt his blood pressure spike as he looked at the scanner displays. Multiple contacts were moving toward their position from the direction of human space. The energy signatures matched human military vessels, but the fleet size was much larger than intelligence reports had suggested possible. How many ships? He demanded. Scanner analysis suggests 30 to 40 vessels, sir. Multiple classes, including what appear to be heavy battlecruisers. Impossible. Human fleets do not operate in formations that large. Sir, the contacts are definitely there. Estimated arrival time is 18 hours. Kralthek stared at the scanner data, trying to understand how the situation had changed so dramatically. Had the humans been hiding their true military capability? Was this mining colony actually an advanced military base disguised as a civilian settlement? In the underground command center, Neri received confirmation that Inho's false scanner signatures were working perfectly. The alien fleet was preparing for battle against an enemy that existed only in their own sensors. Phase 6 is now active, she announced to her team leaders. All units prepare for the final escalation. The next part of the plan required perfect coordination between all resistance groups. Mi-Jin-O began broadcasting fake human military communications on frequencies the aliens could intercept. The messages discussed battle preparations and troop movements that sounded realistic, but described forces that did not exist. Bravo Company moved to Grid 77 for defensive positions. She transmitted in military code the aliens had partially broken. Artillery units prepare fire support for incoming orbital assault. Young Ho and Sujin activated hidden transmitters throughout the colony that would create electromagnetic signatures consistent with military equipment being deployed. To alien sensors, it would appear that the empty settlement was suddenly filled with armed human soldiers. The beautiful part of this deception, Su Min explained to Neri, is that we are using their own intelligence capabilities against them. The more sophisticated their scanning equipment, the more convincing our false readings become. Commander Kralthek was facing the nightmare scenario that every military commander feared. His forces were weakened and demoralized from days of fruitless occupation. Now he had to prepare for battle against a human fleet that outnumbered his own ships while defending a ground position that had already proven impossible to secure. Sir, request immediate reinforcements from the nearest Imperial fleet, he ordered. Sir, the nearest reinforcements are 6 days away. Then we faced this threat alone. As night fell over the colony, both sides prepared for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the human settlement. But only one side knew that the approaching battle existed mainly in the imagination of their enemies. The moment had come for the humans to break their silence, but not in the way anyone expected. In the deepest chamber of the underground complex, Yi Jin Kim sat surrounded by weeks of intercepted alien communications. As the colony's linguistics expert, she had been studying Vorthak language patterns and personal conversations between soldiers. I know their names, she announced to Neri with quiet satisfaction. Not just military designations, but their actual personal names, their family connections, their fears and hopes. Neri looked at the data displays showing detailed profiles of individual Vorthak soldiers. How is this possible? They use personal communication channels to talk with families back home. Their encryption is sophisticated, but they never expected anyone to listen for this long or analyze speech patterns this carefully. I know which soldiers have children, which ones are worried about promotions, which ones want to retire after this mission. For weeks, the aliens had been trying to understand an invisible enemy. Now the humans were about to reveal that they had been watching and listening to everything. Every private conversation, every personal fear, every individual weakness. This will be our most powerful weapon, Neri realized. Not the knowledge itself, but the fact that we have it. Yi Jin had prepared carefully for this moment. She had studied Vortex psychology through their own words and understood what would create maximum psychological impact. Personal information delivered at the right time could be more devastating than any physical attack. Begin transmission on all alien communication frequencies, Neri ordered. Throughout the colony, every Vortex soldier heard their personal communication devices activate with incoming messages. But instead of orders from their commanders, they heard something far more disturbing. "Greetings, Kethmore, son of Velthik, from the mining world of Corvix Prime," came a calm female human voice speaking perfect Vorthak language. "We know you have been having trouble sleeping since the third day of occupation. We know you dream about the green forests of your home world. We know you promised your mate Silnera that this would be your final military deployment before retirement." Private Kethmore dropped his weapon and stared at his communication device in shock. How could humans know details about his personal life that he had shared only in private messages to his family? "We also know that you are questioning whether this mission brings honor to your family name," the voice continued. "You are correct to have these doubts, Kethmore. There is no honor in occupying the home of people who have shown you only silence." Similar messages were being broadcast to every alien soldier throughout the colony. Each message was precisely targeted using information Yi Jin had gathered from intercepted personal communications. "Corporal Zethlin, we know about your concerns regarding your promotion review," another human voice said. "We know you fear this assignment will be viewed as a failure by your superiors. We know you have served with distinction for 12 years and deserve better than this confused and pointless mission." Ga Yun-O had been coordinating the communication strategy with Yi Jin. Her background in psychological analysis helped her understand exactly how to phrase each message for maximum emotional impact. "The key is not to threaten them," she explained to her team. "We show them that we could have hurt them any time we wanted but chose not to. We demonstrate capability combined with restraint. This is more frightening than any threat." Commander Kralthek was receiving his own personal message delivered directly to his private command channel. Commander Kralthek, heir to the military legacy of War Master Thekneller, the human voice, said using formal Vorthek titles of respect. "We know this mission troubles you because it does not match the honorable warfare traditions of your ancestors. We know you have been sending modified reports to your superiors because the truth seems impossible to explain." Kralthek felt a chill run through his body. The human somehow knew about his private thoughts and personal struggles with this assignment. They knew details about his family history that were not in any official records. "We have been watching you for 7 days, Commander. We have observed your tactical decisions, your personal habits, your private communications with your family. We know everything about your forces, including information your own soldiers have not reported to you." The message paused for a moment before continuing with devastating precision. "We know that 17 of your soldiers have requested medical evacuation for psychological stress. We know that 23 others have filed requests for transfer to different assignments. We know that your ground forces are operating at 30% effectiveness due to equipment failures that your technicians cannot explain." In the underground command center, Neri was monitoring alien communications as panic spread through their ranks. Soldiers were demanding to know how humans had gained access to their personal information. Officers were trying to determine if there had been security breaches in their communication systems. "Sir, the humans somehow intercepted our private channels," reported Captain Vexnock to Commander Kralthek. "They know things that should be impossible for them to know." How long have they been listening to us? Based on the information they revealed, probably since the first day of occupation, sir. Kralthek realized the full implications of this discovery. If the humans had been monitoring all their communications, then every tactical decision, every troop movement, every weakness had been observed and analyzed. His forces had never been fighting invisible enemies. They had been performing for an audience that was studying their every move. They could have used this information to attack us at any time, he said quietly. Yes, sir, but they chose not to. Why would they show restraint toward an occupying force? I do not know, sir, but it suggests they are more sophisticated than we assumed. The final message was broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Warriors of the Vorthok Empire, you came here expecting to find weak civilians who would surrender to superior force. Instead, you found a community that chose to respond with patience, wisdom, and careful observation. We could have harmed you in many ways, but we preferred to let you discover for yourselves that conquest without understanding leads only to confusion and defeat. We offer you the opportunity to leave with dignity intact. This choice remains open, but it will not remain open forever. The transmission ended, leaving only silence on all alien communication channels. For the first time since the invasion began, the Vorthok forces had to consider the possibility that retreat might be their only rational option. The formal request for negotiation came 12 hours after the human broadcast. Commander Kralthek used diplomatic protocols that Neri recognized from her military training. He was asking for a meeting between equals, not demanding surrender from defeated enemies. This is unprecedented, Taiho said as he analyzed the alien message. In all recorded history, the Vorthok Empire has never requested negotiations with the species they invaded. Neri stood in the underground command center studying the diplomatic communication. The wording was careful and respectful, using formal language that acknowledged human capability, rather than dismissing it as primitive resistance. They are offering us something they have never offered anyone before, she realized. The chance to end this conflict without either side losing face. Captain, should we not demand their complete withdrawal and reparations for the invasion? Asked Unbi. No. We need to think beyond simple victory. What outcome serves our long-term interests best? Neri had been considering this moment since the invasion began. Total humiliation of the Vorthok would make them enemies forever, but a solution that allowed both sides to claim success could create something much more valuable than military victory. The meeting was arranged to take place in the colony center at midday. Neri emerged from the underground tunnels for the first time in over a week, followed by her senior staff. The sunlight felt strange after so many days in artificial lighting. Commander Kralthek was waiting with a small honor guard. He was smaller than Neri had expected, but carried himself with the dignity of an experienced military leader. When he saw her approaching, he performed a formal salute that she recognized as a gesture of respect between professional soldiers. Captain Kim, I am honored to meet the architect of our defeat, he said in careful but correct human language. Commander Kralthek, I prefer to think of this as the beginning of understanding between our peoples. They sat at a simple table that Jin Wu had placed in the colony square. The conversation that followed was unlike any negotiation in the history of either species. I must be honest with you, Captain, Kralthek began. My forces are no longer capable of effective occupation. Your methods have rendered them unable to function as a military unit. I understand, Commander. Our methods were designed to achieve exactly that result. May I ask why you chose restraint when you clearly had the capability to cause casualties? Neri considered her answer carefully. Because dead soldiers become martyrs. Confused and demoralized soldiers become teachers who warn others about the dangers of underestimating opponents. Kralthek was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications of her words. You planned for this conflict to end with my forces returning home to spread warnings about human capabilities. Among other things, yes. This level of strategic thinking suggests your species is far more sophisticated than our intelligence reports indicated. Commander, what if I told you that everything you experienced here was organized by civilian colonists with minimal military training? Would that change your assessment of human capabilities? The alien commander looked around at the peaceful settlement where his elite forces had been systematically neutralized without a single battle. It would suggest that we have fundamentally misunderstood what makes humans dangerous. Neri leaned forward slightly. Now let me offer you something unprecedented, a way for both of us to achieve our objectives. I am listening. Your empire sent you here to assess human military capabilities and claim resources. You can return home and report that you successfully completed both missions. How is that possible when we are clearly withdrawing in defeat? You assessed our capabilities very thoroughly. You now know that humans are capable of sophisticated psychological warfare, advanced surveillance techniques, and coordinated civilian resistance. This is valuable intelligence that will help your empire avoid future conflicts with our species. Wan Bin Park had been recording the entire negotiation as historical documentation. He understood that they were witnessing the creation of a new type of diplomatic resolution. As for resources, Neri continued, we are prepared to offer you something more valuable than mining equipment or raw materials. What could civilians offer that would interest the Vorthok Empire? Information about 17 other species in this sector that your intelligence services have been unable to analyze effectively. We have been trading with them for years and understand their capabilities, weaknesses, and motivations. Kralthek felt his pulse quicken. Intelligence about multiple species was indeed more valuable than the modest resources of a single mining colony. His superiors would view such information as a major intelligence coup. In exchange for this information, what do you require from us? 3 things. First, complete withdrawal of your forces from this system, with no future claims on our territory. Second, a formal agreement that the Vorthok Empire will approach all future human contacts through diplomatic channels rather than military invasion. Third, intelligence about potential threats to human colonies that your empire may have identified in this region. You are asking us to become your allies. I am asking you to become rational neighbors who solve problems through cooperation rather than conquest. The negotiation continued for 6 hours, but the essential framework was established in those first exchanges. Both sides would claim victory while establishing a foundation for future peaceful relations. Commander Kralthek would return to his empire with valuable intelligence about multiple species and a recommendation that humans be classified as a diplomatically engaging civilization rather than a military target. Neri would have secured not just the safety of her colony, but the protection of all human settlements in the region through a precedent that proved peaceful resistance could be more effective than violent defense. Captain, I must ask one final question, Kralthek said, as they prepared to finalize their agreement. Would your methods work against other species, or were they specifically designed to exploit Vorthok psychology? Neri smiled for the first time since the invasion began. Commander, every species has different weaknesses and strengths. The key is patience, careful observation, and the wisdom to know when not to fight. 6 months after the Vorthok fleet departed from Kepler 442 bits, the mining colony had returned to its peaceful daily routine. But everything had changed in ways that were not immediately visible to casual observers. HFY Park was treating a minor cut on Tahoe's hand in the medical bay when he asked the question that everyone had been thinking about. Doctor, do you think we will ever face another invasion? HFY carefully cleaned the wound before answering. I do not know, Tahoe, but I am not worried about it anymore. Why not? Because we learned something important about ourselves. We discovered that ordinary people can become extraordinary when they work together with patience and intelligence. The medical bay looked exactly the same as it had before the invasion. The same equipment, the same supplies, the same clean white walls. But HFY felt different when she worked there now. She knew that her hands could save lives and her mind could help protect an entire community. Across the colony, similar changes were taking place in the hearts and minds of people who had lived through the silent resistance. Bo-Raleigh stood in the main engineering section, looking at systems she had helped turn into weapons of psychological warfare. Jinwoo, do you ever think about what we accomplish? She asked the young mechanic who was working nearby. Every day, Jinwoo replied. I used to think engineering was just about fixing machines and keeping systems running. Now I know that understanding how things work can be the difference between freedom and slavery. We became something new during those weeks underground. Not soldiers, but not just civilians either. What would you call us then? Bora considered the question while watching the normal operations of the mining equipment. I think we became proof that there are many different ways to be strong. In the communications center, Meijin was monitoring routine interstellar traffic when she noticed something interesting in the data patterns. Messages from human colonies throughout the sector were requesting information about defensive strategies and civilian resistance techniques. "Neri, you should see this," she called to the captain who was reviewing daily operational reports. Neri looked at the communication logs and smiled. Word about their successful resistance had spread through informal channels to other human settlements. Colony administrators and civilian leaders were asking for training materials and consultation services. "It seems our quiet little victory was not as quiet as we thought," Neri observed. "Should we respond to these requests?" "Yes, but carefully. Every situation is different, and what worked here might not work elsewhere. We can share principles and methods, but each community must develop their own approach." The requests for assistance kept coming. Mining colonies, research stations, agricultural settlements, and even some military installations wanted to learn about the techniques that had defeated a superior enemy without firing a single shot. Neri found herself writing training manuals and giving lectures through video communication to audiences across human space. The concepts she taught were simple but required fundamental changes in thinking about conflict and defense. "The key to our success was not any single technique," she explained during one training session. "It was our willingness to think differently about what victory means and how to achieve it. Traditional military thinking focuses on destroying the enemy or forcing surrender through overwhelming power. We chose a different path. We made ourselves impossible to defeat by becoming impossible to fight. This approach requires patience, discipline, and most importantly, unity among the defending population. Everyone must understand their role and trust that the strategy will work even when results are not immediately visible." So Young Han had been documenting the entire resistance operation for historical analysis. Her detailed records were being studied by academics and military strategists who were trying to understand how civilian populations could successfully resist organized invasion. "What we did was not magic," she wrote in her final report. "It was the application of basic principles that any community can learn and adapt to their specific circumstances. The most important lesson is that strength comes in many forms. Physical power and advanced technology are just two types of strength. Intelligence, patience, cooperation, and the willingness to think creatively can be equally powerful under the right circumstances." Meanwhile, deep in space, the effects of their victory continued to spread in ways the colonists could not have imagined. Commander Kralthek had kept his word and submitted detailed reports about human capabilities to the Vorthok Empire leadership. His recommendations had led to major changes in imperial policy regarding first contact with new species. The traditional approach of immediate military conquest was being replaced with careful observation and diplomatic engagement for civilizations that showed signs of sophisticated thinking. Other alien species had also taken notice. Intelligence reports about humans who could defeat superior forces through psychological warfare and coordinated civilian resistance were being studied by military strategists throughout the galaxy. The reputation of humanity was changing from a young and primitive species to something much more interesting and potentially dangerous. Not because humans were violent, but because they were unpredictable and capable of turning any situation to their advantage through creative thinking. In the colony square, children played games while their parents worked at peaceful occupations. Visitors would see nothing unusual about the settlement, but everyone who lived there carried the knowledge that they had participated in something historic. They had proven that silence could speak louder than gunfire, that patience could defeat aggression, that ordinary people working together could accomplish extraordinary things when they refused to accept that force was the only solution to conflict. As evening fell over Kepler 442 bits, Neri stood once again at the observation deck, watching the twin suns set behind the rocky landscape. The view was exactly the same as it had been before the invasion, but she saw it with different eyes now. "We changed more than just ourselves," she said quietly to HFY who had joined her to watch the sunset. "We changed what it means to be human in a galaxy full of species that thought they understood us." "Do you think other colonies will be able to do what we did?" "Not exactly what we did," Neri replied, "but they will find their own ways to be strong. That is what humans do best. We adapt, we learn, and we survive by becoming something our enemies never expected us to be." The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, and Neri felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Their small mining colony had become a symbol of hope for communities throughout human space, and a warning to anyone who thought that superior technology guaranteed victory. The age of silent resistance had begun.